Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. Hey, who knew there was a hot tub in the new Citizens Tower? Well, maybe the folks who remodeled the building should have sealed up the underground tunnels or two down there before it rained, huh? Yikes. And the Immigration Balancing Act, how to manage the safety of everyone involved against immigrants looking for a better life in Texas, many of them children.
From the studios of KMAC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Brian Mudd.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Also this week, everything's broken. Not uber partisan politics or flooded basements this time. It's broken leadership for a questionable power grid that Lubbock will soon be joining. You know, our Wes Rappaport asked Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick this week if it's really the right time for Lubbock to flip the source of most of its electric power to ERCOT.
I was out in Lubbock, and I'm not going to get in the middle of their city politics, but look, the one thing we have to, what did we learn out of this? The system has worked well for 20 years, but it broke down in a severe time. We've got to fix that. We learned that renewables you can't rely on. It's great to have them on a day like today, but we couldn't rely on wind and solar.
Yeah, but renewables weren't really the issue with the February blackout. It was no plan of action or accountability for power suppliers to prepare their equipment for bad weather. And now the clock's ticking for Lubbock. Several of our state leaders are hinting now that maybe Lubbock should hold off on changing power suppliers until they can get this straightened out. Mayor Pope said here they were looking at all options, but this week maybe a little more reality when Mr. Pope spoke with our Alyssa Tejas.
Lubbock is only months away from joining the ERCOT grid, but state and local leaders say they do have their share of concerns after February's snowstorm.
We expect ERCOT to be safe and to provide choice, and we also expect it to be reliable. And it failed its last test on reliability.
Mayor Pope says they continue to watch the situation closely and have been looking at their options, having conversation with the governor, lieutenant governor, as well as the legislature.
The most important item in front of them, maybe save the budget.
In a teleconference call, State Representative Dustin Burrows saying, quote, "For those of us who are not in the ERCOT grid, hopefully there can be a bit of a pause before we join to make sure those things aren't passed on to people who can't afford it." State Senator Charles Perry telling the Texas Tribune, quote, "If there's a way to pause, take a deep breath and survey, that would be my recommendation."
We've gone down that path. We don't know that there's an option there, but he certainly is very much entitled to those thoughts.
Lubbock Power and Light began the process to join ERCOT in September of 2015, and about 70% of the electrical grid will be transferred to the ERCOT market in June.
What is the likelihood, in your opinion, that we join the ERCOT grid on June 1st?
I think it's pretty high. I mean, that's what we've been working toward.
Mayor Pope also says he's cautiously optimistic about joining the grid, remembering this conversation with Governor Abbott.
Compared where we are today with ERCOT to a used car. And he said, your timing is going to be good, Mayor, because when Lubbock gets in, we're going to have a shiny new car. We're going to have things fixed.
Alyssa Tejas reporting. Always great to be able to say hi to District 5 Councilman Randy Christian, who joins us now. Brother Randy, I want to ask you about the ERCOT situation to get going here. First, are you still on board with a June 1st switch? And would you be willing to pause this to see if some of the problems that have come up get resolved if it comes to that?
Well, the first thing I would say is I hope I would not have to take a strong stand on delay, but, we're still a ways away from there. But my position is right now that this has got to be fixed. And it will be fixed. How long it will take to be fixed, I think we still have a little business to take care of, because this, in my opinion, this debacle and this disaster has less to do with Lubbock, Texas, and more to do with the entire state of Texas. Mm-hmm. It's just, unfortunately, what happened, a month ago to our fellow Texans downstate, we're going to reap the benefits of it, because. Yeah. This is not just about ERCOT and just not about electricity, and in my opinion, I think it's a serious economic development issue for the state of Texas and for our part of the world too. So, and as I understand, it is, they got to come up with a budget down in Austin during this session. But the second most important thing, which it should be, is ERCOT, and there's been a lot of heads that roll. So, I feel confident that it's going to be fixed. For a lot of reasons. And of course, we have a very important reason we want to, but the state of Texas, I think the state the stakes for the entire state are much higher.
Oh, sure. You know, Councilman Griffith had mentioned that the LP&L board could come with a recommendation to hold things potentially if this starts to drag on in Austin. Is there a mechanism to extend the contract with Southwest Power Pool for a little longer if it were to come to that?
I have just heard conversations about that, but I couldn't tell you definitively whether that could happen or not. I mean, anything can happen. If you want, somebody wants to, if we want to talk to somebody about buying, going back on that grid and having power to have electricity, but I'm just going to wait and see. We still have a little ways to go on this thing. But I think the other thing that our citizens need to understand is what would really happen if we didn't go ahead and join up. Because we've got, hundreds and thousands of dollars tied into infrastructure right in our city, and we've all seen a lot of big old huge poles going up over the last year, a lot of money tied up in those. And if we were to pull out of ERCOT, one of the things that could be very devastating, in my opinion, is we wouldn't be able to transmit, LP&L wouldn't be able to generate revenues, transmission revenues on all of that equipment that we've now invested in. And it could have a serious impact on an LP&L's budget. Could it involve or result in higher rates to offset those revenues that we're not getting, because those transmission revenues? I think it's very possible.
Hey, while we've got you here, I know you've been on the subcommittee working on setting up the new Unified Development Code. A lot of parts of that are now ready for folks to look at a little bit and just give their first opinions on. Can you give folks first a brief idea of what this is and why it's so needed here?
Uniform Development Codes, in my opinion, touches almost every citizen in some form or fashion. The Uniform Development Codes have not really been reviewed or revised since the early 80s. We're a very different city than we were then, but we're talking about everything. And I just made a list of some of the things that, by the way, here's my workbook. Wow. 5 different modules, and they cover everything from fences to carports to accessory buildings, short-term rental, landscaping, downtown signage, playa lake development, public art, murals, soups to nuts. It really is. And so I think it's, without question, I can say most every citizen could and may be touched by these revisions and these corrections, or not corrections, but updatings.
How much input are you getting from developers and investors who are already deep into all the expansion that we're seeing around town?
Oh, most definitely. I talked to them individually a couple of times and collectively, and we want citizen input, not just developers input, because when you start looking at these codes, you will understand why I will once again say it will impact everybody in some form or fashion, I would think. We're going to have open houses. We have some focus groups for specific elements of the Uniform Development Code. So it really is something that's long overdue. And I think that particularly when we talked about downtown in our last meeting, it's going to merge into our downtown redevelopment plan as well. And it should.
And you're going to let folks start to talk about that in your next meeting, council meeting too, right?
Correct. Next Thursday, we're having a combined council meeting, P&Z meeting. And so folks are always invited to be to those. So that will kind of be the first open door to the general public. But also, you might as well, I'm going to have my first real life town hall meeting on, I believe it's April the 6th. I think that's a Tuesday. We'll get more information out. But I think the timing for this is perfect with all of these different issues that we have going on. And ERCOT will be a topic there.
Very good. Well, take advantage of that, and we're always happy to steal some time from Randy Christian, the councilman from District 5. Good to see you again, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Have a good one. Take care.
And we're going to continue to look at the fallout from the state's power and pricing issues coming up and how they affect folks in Lubbock. Next, a chat with insider Scott Braddock on the behind-the-scenes stress at the Capitol over finding solutions to this and more. Next on Talking Points.